It was a bright morning in Geneva, and the marble floors of the conference center reflected the light pouring through the tall glass walls as Michael Stanton, a self-made billionaire from New York, walked briskly through the lobby, his phone pressed to his ear and his eyes darting toward the rows of waiting interpreters, only to realize that his own translator had missed the flight due to a sudden storm over the Atlantic, and his meeting with the Swiss energy delegation was just 20 minutes away. He felt a knot tighten in his chest as he tried to remember a few words of French from his university days. But all that came to mind was a confused mix of phrases he could not pronounce correctly. He had come all this way to close a deal that would open renewable energy channels for his company across Europe, a deal worth over $100 million, and now he could not even greet the delegation properly. As he reached the hotel cafe for a quick coffee, he sat at the corner table, scrolling frantically through his contacts, hoping to find someone in the area who could help. But his network had failed him for once, and the weight of his empire felt heavy in that moment. A waitress approached, carrying a tray, her dark hair tied neatly and her name tag reading Amélie. She noticed the agitation in his eyes and in careful English asked if he was all right. He tried to smile, but muttered that he was about to lose a fortune because his translator was missing. Amélie paused, then asked if the meeting was with the Swiss energy team. And when he nodded, she hesitated only a second before saying she spoke fluent French and German since she had studied linguistics before taking this job to support her younger sister, who was ill. Michael looked up in disbelief, asking if she would help. And she said quietly, she would try, though she had never done professional translation before. He glanced at his watch and realized he had no choice. Within 10 minutes, they were walking side by side toward the conference room, his expensive suit contrasting with her simple uniform. Yet in that moment they were united by urgency and chance. As they entered the glass doors, he whispered that she just needed to help him sound respectful and clear. She nodded, her hands trembling slightly, but her eyes steady as they faced the delegation, waiting behind the long, polished table. And Michael thought for the first time in years that his fortune depended not on numbers or strategy, but on a stranger's courage and grace. The meeting began with the formality of European diplomacy, as the Swiss officials greeted Michael, politely expecting an interpreter, and when Amélie stepped forward, introducing herself in perfect French, the tension in the room softened, her voice steady, though inside her heart raced as she translated his first words about collaboration and sustainable vision. Michael spoke with his usual confidence, but every sentence was a leap of faith as she bridged languages with precision and warmth. Soon the delegation began to smile, nodding at his proposals as she captured not only his words but his tone and sincerity. She realized that language was not just about grammar but about trust and rhythm, and she adjusted his phrases subtly to make them sound natural and respectful. In their context, Michael noticed the way her presence transformed the room, how the delegates leaned in, how one of them even asked questions that revealed genuine interest. Amélie translated back to him, her eyes meeting his only briefly but with assurance. The discussion deepened into technical details about solar infrastructure and logistics. She handled the terminology with surprising ease, recalling her university research projects that she had left unfinished after her father's passing. Her voice flowed smoothly between languages, and Michael could see the admiration building across the table. The lead delegate finally smiled broadly and proposed an informal luncheon to continue discussions, which meant progress. Michael felt a surge of relief, though he kept his composure as Amélie guided him through polite conversation about Swiss innovation and American entrepreneurship. By the end of the meeting, a draft agreement had been outlined, and the delegation agreed to move forward with final negotiations over the coming weeks. As they left the room, Michael turned to Amélie with gratitude, too large for words. She looked tired but proud, he offered to compensate her generously. But she shook her head, saying she only hoped his project would create jobs that mattered to people like her. That night, Michael sat in his suite, reflecting on how close he had come to disaster and how a waitress had turned it into triumph. 2 months later, Michael returned to Geneva for the signing ceremony. The contract finalized and the renewable project ready to launch. He had insisted that Amélie be invited as an honorary guest. She arrived in a simple dress, looking both nervous and radiant, as reporters filled the hall when the Swiss minister gave a short speech about cooperation. He mentioned her by name, calling her the bridge between opportunity and understanding, and the room applauded warmly. Michael watched her eyes glisten with disbelief later during the reception. He approached her with an envelope containing an offer, not of money but of education. He had arranged a full scholarship for her to complete her linguistics degree at the University of Geneva. She stared at him speechless as he explained that it was the least he could do for someone who had saved not just a deal, but his faith in human decency. Amélie accepted with tears. She later told the press she never imagined that serving coffee could change her life. Michael's company went on to establish a translation and inclusion fund for young multilingual students in her honor. Each year, he would send her a handwritten card on the anniversary of the deal, thanking her again for reminding him that success begins with listening, not speaking. Years later, she became a renowned interpreter for international organizations, guiding dialogues that shaped policy and peace. And every time she stood behind a microphone, she remembered that morning in the cafe when a billionaire had been lost without words and a waitress had found her purpose in giving him a voice.